I wrote a little something about this, and it got put up on the site. So forgive me if some of this sounds vaguely familiar, but the nature of pilgrimage is that it's not just an expedition or a journey. It's an expedition or journey as spiritual practice, right? That's what it's about. That's why you call something a pilgrimage, right? And if you look at the way pilgrimages through history have been constructed, and there's a pretty large body of sort of critical theory in the West about that the kind of basis for the Western idea about travel mostly arose out of pilgrimage, interestingly enough, like the pilgrimages that Chaucer talks about and so on, that happened all over Europe as a way of connecting people with the spiritual landscape of their homeland, right? Pretty amazing, right? Eventually people were like, actually, I don't want to make it spiritual practice. I just want to go to Biarritz or something like that. And after that, the spiritual practice aspect diminished with in regular travel. But we're still doing it here. Okay, so this is a journey of spiritual practice, right? And so the main aspect of that is that the destinations are great, and the destinations of this particular pilgrimage are great, right? The Bayagiri is among all, they're all great, but just the end point, the Bayagiri, is really a remarkable place and tremendously beautiful, right? Great, right? So we could today, get on our bikes and ride to a Bayagiri and arrive there and go, wow, this is great, right? And if we were really crazy, we could just even do it all in a day. That would be awesome. But we're not going to do that. We can visit a bunch of other places along the way, and we're going to take it a little bit easier than that, because it's a spiritual journey, okay? And it involves a kind of conduct that requests considered mindful and exemplary engagement all the way through, from the minute we, or from right now actually, until we, till way after we get there. And so what does that mean? So I'm going to speak a little bit from a Zen perspective now, just because that's what I'm the most familiar with. But I think this kind of resonates generally, right? I'm embarrassed to say that in the Zen world, when Zen first kind of landed in America, a lot of people, even some fairly important people, had this idea about it, that it was about somehow practicing a particular set of meditative and yogic practices in order to produce these special mental states that would somehow rescue us from being human, right? And that that's all you had to do, right? Was rescue yourself from being human, and then it wasn't going to be a problem anymore. It turns out that was never the point. Right? And if you look back at the literature, the origin literature of Zen in China, it's clearly not about that. It's about exemplary conduct, right? And probably one of the most famous also sort of essays written by the founder of Japanese Zen is this one called Gyoji, which is usually translated as continuous practice, but if you really look into what it means steadfast conduct, basically, right? That's what it's about, right? It's about how we can behave with each other and with everyone in a way that promotes comfort, skill, wakefulness, and a kind of spacious realm of possibility in every interaction. How can we do that? So how can we help each other wake up, right? So that's what you do on pilgrimage. Is you bring that kind of conduct to all the activities, including, pedaling your bicycle and being skillful with the car traffic and being helpful and courteous and kind to each other and to everyone you meet. Right. That's what the nature of pilgrimage on a bike. Right. So when you talk about conduct in the context of early Buddhism, right? It's captured by the term sila, right? And it mainly is and in pretty much all Buddhist schools, it's embodied and enshrined in a ceremony where you take the precepts, right? That's how I got this, and this is the third version of this for me. This is a different color than the last one and than the one previous in that for reasons that are way too technical to go into here. But every time you get another one of these, you go through exactly the same ceremony. It's essentially just re-upping your commitment to sila, right? To the conduct, to exemplary conduct, right? And the first 5 precepts that everyone pretty much agrees on are, you don't kill, you don't steal, you don't lie, you don't misuse sexuality or engage in sexual misconduct, and you don't intoxicate yourself or others, right? Those are simply stated and good things to keep in mind, but the conduct has a kind of inner sphere and an outer sphere. The outer sphere is obvious, how you conduct yourself in the world, right? The inner sphere is a little bit less obvious, and it's worth thinking about if you're going to spend a whole day, mostly talking to yourself as you ride your bike, right? What does it mean, for example, in the inner sphere to let's pick one, to not lie, right? What does that exactly mean, right? Is it possible to explore your relationship with effort, the stories you tell yourself about effort, with your response to disjunctions between your narrative about what's happening now and the actuality of what's happening right now. I mean, this is the subtle inner conduct that arises when you start thinking about truth, right? Everyone has a default narrative that they tell about their lives, which cannot possibly be true because life and the world are way too complicated to be captured in a simple story, right? Even a complicated story, they're way too complicated. So what we do is we're always running up against gaps and disjunctions and dissonances between our default narrative and the reality as it presents itself. And there's 2 possibilities. There are actually 3 possibilities. We can double down on our default narrative and say, it's true and that other stuff is either meaningless or untrue, right? That's a form of lying, right? And when that expresses itself into the world, it's probably actual lying, right? In the outer sphere, right? The other thing you can do is you can say, new information, let's do something creative, right? There's a great metaphor in a book I just finished where the author talks about this. Think about a jazz band. They're kind of in a club somewhere, hammering through some standard, and suddenly the piano player plays the wrong chord, right? There's two ways to respond to that. One is everybody can glower at them, and everyone in the audience goes, wow, these guys are really bad, right? You know? Right? Or the guy who's soloing and everybody else in the band can go, wow, I can work with that. That's kind of interesting, and it goes off somewhere else, right? That's the opportunity that's presented by these disjunctions, which is a kind of it's a kind of unabashed and creative truthfulness that doesn't paper over, deny, or resent the disjunction or dissonance. It celebrates it and does something new and fresh, right? That's the inner conduct of not lying, right? And it expresses itself in an outer way over time as a kind of as the kind of paradigm of right speech, right? So there's an example, right? All of the precepts have an inner and an outer nature, and they're worth exploring in all those details equally, and we can do that, pretty much every day, and particularly today since we're on a pilgrimage, right? So, thank you a lot.